Hey, wait a minute. Where's my bed? I know. What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. It's time for my cat to meow at me. It's time for another episode of min-maxing for fun and profit. I really said Achilles was not going to be in the room with me when I got a setup where I could have my bedroom not be my studio. But, I mean, I think we can live with it for a couple more weeks, right? Neat. Come on, buddy. Can we get a boop for the viewers, please? I really don't want to reach over and get your treats. Come on. Come on. Whoa. Whoa. Well, fine, we'll get you a goddamn treat. You glutton? You're a glutton, Achilles. Do you hear me? You're a fat boy. I'm fat shaming my cat. Please support us on Patreon so I can fat shame my cat some more. JK, I don't know where Lucia put your treats. Today we're doing a 2-for-1. I know we talked about it being 3, but unfortunately I couldn't really make Arrow Eruption work in this build as well as I could another one, which we'll do soon. But John wants a gun magus, AJ wants us to build around the cold spells, and so indeed, in a hail of bullets, I hate myself for that pun, but you take it. Today we're building another one of my favorite classes, that classic Arcane Gish, this time Rudy Tooty Big Gun Shooty. And before we get down to business real quick, 2 announcements. Jump forward like 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this. First things first, I'm going to say it basically everywhere I can. I'll start posting this on socials as well. Black Dragon Gaming is looking for an editor. I have the ability to finance one. I'm about to have a house, not this apartment. I'll know where my finances land. And y'all have been waiting long enough for 2nd edition content. I just also don't want to screw my patrons. So if you can make my content better and have a good turnaround time, or you know somebody who does, please, in the comments on any of my socials, wherever you can reach me, wherever you're free to tell me, please do so. Second, I know the world is super scary right now. I know my voice goes across planet Earth, and I know that even today, Wednesday at like 5:30 p.m. my time, the situation looks much different than it will Saturday morning when this video comes out. I believe my PFS friends will understand when I say this is the time to hold the third tenet, the cooperate bit together. Because we all got to band together to make the world a decent place right now. Hey, if you're out there, be good, be safe, wash your hands. But enough about that. Today, this episode of Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit was brought to you in part by one of our newest patrons. Actually, I'm going to completely just cut the line on this one because I haven't got to say this one in a long time. It's brought to you in part by Mr. Canesmail, former editor of the channel, who's finally decided I'm worth 5 of his hard-earned Canadian dollars. Thank you, buddy. Miss you. I'm going to message you on Discord after this because I miss you. And apparently Achilles does too. Jesus. Is that so, little one? Okay, right down to brass tacks on this one. We are going to cheat a couple of feats on this build that, by a strict interpretation of rules as written, cannot be taken for someone using a firearm. Most of these feats were printed before the gunslinger was introduced, before firearms were a major part of the setting. And I've said it before, I will say it again, firearms are not as good as people think they are. Or at least we should not be afraid of them because of what they are. A well-optimized archer will hit for a lot harder, and yes, a gun can resolve against touch AC, but a well-optimized archer is hitting everything anyway and doing just gobs more damage. Introducing technology into your world can be really fun, really interesting, really exciting. And so, yeah, by all means, we'll do some quality of life things to be a little easier on the slingers of all shapes and sizes. But today, to make a ranged magus, we're stacking a couple of archetypes together. The Eldritch Archer with the Myrmidarch. Myrmidarch? Words are hard. Speaking of hard words, of course, remember, patronage at any tier will get you access to a Google Sheet that this build is put together for you on. And real quick, we had a patron ask for a folder where all these are. I will get that together. I've realized that some of these look a lot better or worse than others. Basically, all of Black Dragon Gaming's career has been Tommy messes around on the internet and makes money doing so. So we're constantly perfecting what it looks like. As far as those old ones go, we'll get there. I digress. The Myrmidarch gets 1 fewer spell of each level than normal, gets ranged spell strike, much like the Eldritch Archer, but we like it because it gets weapon training, armor training, and through that, the advanced weapon training that can allow our firearm to hit a little harder. The Eldritch Archer does a lot of the same things that the Myrmidarch does. It also gives us a bonded object. As per the wizard's arcane bonded object, it must be a ranged weapon. It can't be used to cast a spell. Holding it does not prevent the archer from providing somatic components. This allows us to get a firearm, a pretty expensive thing, pretty early. It's worth noting that with ranged spell strike, we can't shocking grasp through our weapon. We gotta use spells that call for a ranged touch, but there's some Arcana to help us dig out from that. We're gonna take 19 levels of Magus and 1 level of Cross-Blooded Sorcerer, y'all know it. If you want to do Elemental Blasting, Cross-Blooded, Orc, and Draconic, will give us 2 damage per die rolled. Now, for our race today, we will be playing, of course, a Tiefling. They make a wonderful two-handed Magus because we really like Metamagic Rods on this build. Granted, I may be a little biased, I'm a big fan of any class that can Nova, or use all of its resources in a combat and then be exhausted afterwards, to have a lot of things to hedge their bets. In any case, it does make the quality of life a little easier when that prehensile tail can hold the Metamagic Rod for you, so you can get quicken spells that much easier. For our traits, of course, Magical Lineage. Honestly, if your GM will let you, go ahead and take Wayang Spellhunter. Go ahead and reduce Frigid Touch, our spell of choice, from 2 to 0, because it's just that much better. But that is our spell of the day, basically. It won't be the thing we cast all the time, but it is the one we want to cast most of the time. It's a 2nd level evocation with the Cold Descriptor spell. Range of Touch, we'll need to wait a little while before we can get there on our boomstick. This spell causes your hand to glow with pale blue radiance. Your melee touch attack, again, gotta hold out a little bit, deals 4d6 points of cold damage and causes the target to get staggered for a round. If the attack crits, the target is staggered for a full minute. In case you're new to this system, staggered is probably the worst thing that could happen to you, short of just getting one-shotted. And one of the spells that is on this list, and we will talk about, got eroded, because apparently staggering at level 1 is too good. I digress. A staggered creature may take a single move action or standard action each round, but not both, nor can they take full round actions. A staggered creature can still take free, swift, and immediate actions. A creature with non-lethal damage exactly equal to current gains the staggered condition. This shuts off full attacks. This shuts off charges. Probably the biggest argument for why you want Vital Strike on your character if you're not a Vital Striker. And it's one of the reasons we have one of our feats on our build in late game without retraining it, because if you get hit with the thing that's doing what you're doing, or anything else that can stagger you, you want to have as much value as possible. And for our stat priority, we want Intelligence as our highest stat, followed very closely by Dexterity. The more spells we can get, the better, frankly. That's the only reason I'm prioritizing that over our ability to hit, initiative, reflex saves, so on and so forth. Con is next, please don't die. Strength is next, don't get encumbered by your gun. Don't throw your shoulder out of the socket when you fire the thing. Then Wisdom, so you don't get mind controlled, followed last by Charisma, because we don't really need it. Maybe get it to 10 so you can have like a sorcerer spell. Feat time, here we go. Right out the gate, point blank shot, you gotta have it. It's a prereq for all the things, and really, for a while, we'll be firing in point blank shot range as it is. It's also worth noting that we'll use our Eldritch Archer shenanigans for a musket, but we're probably gonna be running around with a crossbow for a little while, because we've got no strength for one. For two, we aren't proficient with a firearm for a little while on this build. Honestly, if you're rolling for stats or your GM will let you rule of cool the ability to use your metamagic rods, you might just play a human just so you could have the proficiency now. Precise shot at level 3 to make sure you hit, then at level 5, we'll take rapid reload, because remember, rapid reload plus paper cartridges equals free action reloads on a musket. Alongside it, we'll take that feat that we're gonna say works for firearms, focused shot. As a standard action, you may make an attack with a bow or crossbow and add your int to damage. You must be within 30 feet for this extra damage to happen. Creatures immune to critical hits and sneak attacks are immune to this damage. I think it's totally fine to allow the firearm to do this, because both the Advanced Player's Guide and Pathfinder campaign setting came out before the Gunslinger did, and really, I just think that these didn't see an errata because guns are not always allowed in games. This was exactly why I was going to put Arrow Eruption on this build as well, because that spell is just so darn old. Should we get staggered? Should we have to move in late game play? Sure, adding our int looks real good. As we take it at 5th, we don't have a second attack yet, so if we're out of spell slots, or remember, Magi can just cast a spell the round before hold the charge. Since we're allowed to deliver a ranged spell through a ranged attack, we are making a ranged attack with that standard action. Anyway, at level 7, this is where we're taking our sorcerer dip. Grab gunsmithing so you can make your ammo dirt cheap, right alongside exotic weapon proficiency with the musket as soon as you can get something on the training enchantment. Moving on, at level 9, our next feat of choice will be kind of a 2 of the 1-2 punch here. Rhyme spell. The frost from your cold spell clings to the target, impeding it for a short time. A rhyme spell causes creatures that take cold damage from that spell to become entangled for a number of rounds equal to the original level of the spell. AKA, a rhyme spell says that a creature moves at half speed, can't run or charge, and takes a -2 on all attacks and a -4 to dex, or in theory a -3 on finessing attack rolls. An entangled creature who attempts to cast makes a DC 15 plus spell level concentration check or loses the spell. Looks real good when you're also staggering, folks. Since reloading is a free action, we'll grab Rapid Shot next, followed by Clustered Shots. Real good for anybody who's trying to make more than one ranged attack, because Clustered Shot will allow us to total all of our attacks together before damage reduction. We'll grab Empower spell here, and for the record, when we do our Empower spell math, the all variable numeric things increased by half that Empower spell does, we're just gonna pretend we're two-handing our spell, then increase it by half after. Once you can get Clustered Shots on the training enchantment, Intensified spell also is super staple for the Magi, who wants to do more than the capped amount of damage for their low-level spell. Right? That's all of us. It's super good. Suppose we ought to eventually put Deadly Aim on this thing, because when we're full attacking, we're not adding any modifiers to damage, and since we are targeting touch, should be fine. I bet we hit even with the penalty. Then Reckless Aim for a +2 on our attack roll at the cost of a -1 to our AC, and if we roll a 1, we might hit a friend. Always remember to talk to your folks. Last but not least, Quicken spell and Maximize spell for our 19th level feat and final Magus feat respectively. For our Arcana, Arcane Accuracy will let us do the thing we want to do with Focus Shot. Add int to all the things, looks real good as a swift action. Weapon training with firearms will let us do extra damage. Thank you, Mr. Myrmidark. Then, Reach Spell Strike. It's just super necessary for our build, delivering spells with a range of touch with ranged Spell Strike up to a maximum range of close, aka within point blank shot range, which allows us to frigid touch with a gun. Of course, when we hit weapon training too, we'll grab Focused Weapon to do War Priest damage with our gun. It's that classic 5e argument, once again, 2d6, in fact, better than 1d12. Distant Spell Strike will increase our Spell Strike range with ranged Spell Strike up to the range increment of the Boomstick, then Weapon Training +2 at the end. Before we hit the math, our key magic items, every single last meta magic feat we are taking today, we want to get on a meta magic rod. This will allow us to cast 3 times per day using that meta magic feat without increasing spell level. Maybe you don't necessarily need to spend the boatload of gold for a maximized one, but Quickened is real nice, Intensified is real good, and by the end of the game, you've probably got a lot of gold laying around. No reason to not. If nothing else, you could finagle some item crafty stuff on this build if you want to move a couple feats around. So far as our enchantment goes, the spell storing one is super great. Any spell of 3rd level or lower, put it into the weapon. When the weapon deals damage, the spell is cast. The fun thing about being a ranged Magus is you could, though it would be like the most expensive, most bougie thing your character ever did. And so yeah, we're doing it in the math. Why wouldn't we? Get that on your ammunition as well. Spell storing bullets, why not? Of course, you're going to want as many pearls of power as you can get your hands on. Then if your GM will allow it, the cold variant of the Amulet of the Spirits, because vulnerability to fire is real nice. Might as well burn that swift action for vulnerability to cold as well. That plus the extra damage per die rolled is how we're beating things with resistance. With immunity, again, follow this card right up here. I don't think immunity is fair to use against players. GMs have so many more tools in their toolbox for optimized scary encounters that they don't need to nerf their players in the process. But remember, things like haste, wall of force, the pit spells, those are all on our spell list as well. So if you're fighting a lot of white dragons, just put them in the penalty box. For our spells, we've already talked about Frigid Touch. There's 2 more we gotta talk about today. Snowball, which once upon a time was a level 1 spell that would stagger, now is just our own ranged cold shocking grasp for 1d6 points of cold damage per caster level, max 5d6. Also, it's kind of hilarious to think that you're throwing that thing we threw at each other as children and exploding somebody. Flurry of Snowballs at spell level 2 is a cone-shaped burst. Any creature in the area takes 4d6 points of cold damage. And remember, focusing Spell Strike by 16th level. You could point one of these at somebody. If nothing else, having that cone in your back pocket doesn't hurt. The great thing about a Gish is you are very versatile. Another clutch spell while we're talking cold stuff, Ice Storm does 3d6 points of bludgeoning and 2d6 points of damage, plus 10 with Orc and Draconic, per die rolled at no save. After which, that 20-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder is treated as difficult terrain, and creatures inside it take a -4 on perception. This helps your non-invisible stealthy folks do their job. Also, difficult terrain is good at every level. If nothing else, throwing 5d6 at the board will probably knock a lot of little guys out. I digress. Time for everyone's favorite part of this. Let's do some math. At the end of the day, we've got a base attack of 14, plus 5 from a very, very magical gun. Whether that's from an arcane pool or from your own enchantment, your call. Then let's pretend we had 30 dex from Belt and Book Fu. Man, that number feels so much smaller than the 17 was it? Strength of yeeting meteors. It's come a long way. -4 for Deadly Aim, plus 1 from the public broadcasting system. Plus 2 from weapon training, -2 from rapid shot, plus 2 from reckless aim, plus 1 from haste at the end of the day. And that would be 29, 3 times, 24, then 19. Our musket will end up doing 2d6 points of damage, plus 5 for its enhancement, plus 8 from deadly aim, plus 2 from weapon training, plus 1 from PBS, sometimes plus our intelligence, standard actions aside. So we're looking at, on average, 23 points of damage from 5 attacks, 115. Now let's talk magical stuff, hooray! For funsies, let's assume someone else is holding your Amulet of the Spirits and use their swift action to enable you. That's what friends are for, right? We're gonna assume, like we always do, that we've got as much setup time as we needed. They've failed their save, they're vulnerable to cold, so our swift action attack in the full attack round is from a quickened spell. Quickened from the Rod, Rhyme, Maximized, Intensified, Frigid Touch. So we're looking at a base plus 2 from Frigid Touch being a 2nd level spell, then Rhyme plus 1, Intensified plus 1, Maximized 1, 2, 3, -1 from Magical Lineage. It's a level 6 spell that will do 9d6 plus 18 from our cross-blooded bloodline, say that 10 times fast. So that's 72. Then take that times 1.5, because they're taking half again as much damage if they're vulnerable to cold, or 108 from that particular ranged spell strike. And they're staggered for a round or for a minute if you crit. We're not going to do the crit math this time. No real way to assure it, but God, that's a ×4 coming at them. And they're entangled for a couple of rounds. Oopsie. We're gonna just go ahead and pretend. Again, we are as bougie as we can be. We have enchanted a certain amount of snowball / pearl of power / musket balls. Really, it all just kind of works together, like packing a snowball for the best. I'm gonna throw this at Cthulhu's dome and he's gonna explode. Wow, this works on many levels. Dope. Anyway, we've got spell storing on the gun, spell storing in every round that we're firing, meaning 6 spells are cast in a full attack action. Let's say, since they have to cap out at level 3, they are always rhyming. Just to be sure, maybe we don't necessarily have to rhyme all of them, but I think it's worth that being the standard, given that you never know how many things are going to be on the board. But Empowered and Intensified, Frigid Touch, level 2, Rhyme plus 1, Empowered plus 2, Intensified plus 1, -1, Magical Lineage, we're looking at a level 5. Of course, that means our Empowered will need to come from the Metamagic Rod, because a Metamagic Rod does not increase the actual level of the spell as it's being cast. Though I'll admit, y'all know, I cast Greatsword. I might be misinterpreting this. You might not be able to put that into a spell storing enchant, because technically it's still above 3rd level. Yell at me in the comments. 9d6 on average is 32, plus 18 again is 50. times 1.5 is 75. In Empowered, this time from an Empowered spell, then times 1.5 again, they're vulnerable to cold. Rounded down, that's 112 points of cold damage. They're entangled for 2 rounds, they're staggered for a bajillion years. Unfortunately, that staggering won't stack, but again, I'm betting you might, just maybe, especially if you've got a witch to have fortuned you, you might maybe crit there. Take that times 6, it's 675 points of cold damage, or 898 thrown throughout the board in this particular bougie full attack. Remember, a lot of times you are going to want to target multiple things in the field this time because staggering is just so darn powerful. Probably, again, the worst condition to put on you short of just dead. That makes you a very interesting combination of the battlefield control and the switch hitter in our optimized party. Follow this card right up here to feel really bad about coup de grace crits. I digress. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. What do you think? Are we playing it? Are we rolling them up? Do we use firearms in your campaign? Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments. Like I said in the Patreon Discord, and remember, patronage at any tier can get your requests for min-maxing for fun and profit, and the other videos as well, once I have that darn editor to the front of the line. For all of you out there who have requested X-Men who are not patrons, I really do want to build Beast on that note. But I've got so many games that I'm GMing and making NPCs for. Sometimes we gotta highlight those builds, if for no other reason, then I just need time to make sure they're functional before I throw them at players and realize that I cheated. So next week, this one's kind of a special exception, because during these times, in fact, I have been invited to be a player in games because we've all just got so much time on our hands. And so I built this really interesting bard that takes advantage of Desna's divine fighting technique and a couple of style feats for just all the shenanigans. I'll introduce y'all to Nick Sander next time. Combat Bard coming at you next week. See you then.